So how do you do all that? I got some tips. Now it takes some practice, but everything takes some practice. So at BHIS, we have this thing called RAYG, report as you go, which means you write the report as you do the test. We do it online where other testers can see it. So if someone needs to step in, they can help us out. We have people, we have a group of people who every once in a while just open up random reports to see how they're going. Use a collection of commonly used sentences and paragraphs so that you don't have to rewrite everything from scratch all the time. That thing I was showing you before about the metadata, use that. Use things like that. They can also help you remember how to do the test. Make sure that you don't forget steps, things that maybe are tedious and you tend to forget to do. If they're in there and there's a placeholder for them, you'll remember to do it. But, and this is critical, don't ever copy and paste from one report into another report. What I actually mean here is don't ever copy from a report. Because sometimes people will say, oh, I copied it from a report into a text file, and that's where I kept it. And then I pasted from the text file into my other report. And that's how I told one customer about another customer's vulnerabilities. Oops. Don't ever copy from a report. If you're writing something you think you might use again, write it somewhere else separately without any customer-specific information. Put placeholders in for where you're going to put those things. Write it generically first. Save that. Paste that into your current report and fill in the blanks. Now you're safe. Now you know that you haven't put one customer's vulnerabilities in another customer's report. So we report with Microsoft Word. I think a lot of you probably do that as well. But everything I've said up to this point is valid no matter what you use. For the rest of this, I'm going to talk about some Word stuff. And this is a slide of just what we're going to talk about next. So if I don't get to everything, I think I might still get to everything. If I don't, we can come back here afterwards and just Google those things. So autocorrect. Autocorrect is not just for typos. So TEH is to the, as IAuth is to this portion of the assessment focused on the authentication, blah, 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 blah. So when you type TEH, Word autocorrects that into the. In my copy of Word, if I type IAUTH, it gets replaced with that paragraph after it. So I'm introducing that I'm testing authentication and authorization processes. And this is how I took some time to write this one, so now I don't have to write it again. And Word just sticks it in there for me. Another one, I have one called iScope. So this area was not in scope for the assessment, so I didn't investigate any further. Anytime I reach a dead end or realize I'm about to go off out of scope, I type iScope and I move on to my next step. I don't have to think about how to phrase that because I've already done it once. With autocorrect, the one thing that's rough about this is it's meant to correct typos. So you have to remember what it is you're typing in that's going to be replaced. So my habit is to I for insert, and then I insert metadata, and that's going to insert this whole metadata thing. This is how you do it in Word for Windows, Word for Mac, sorry. This is how you do it in Word for Windows. And my VM suspended itself, but I'm going to show you how to do it in Word for Windows. I use Mac to do reporting, but I know most of you probably don't. So I'm going to show you in Word for Windows. So here we go. So here's a sample for autocorrect. And this is actually our report template that we use. And you see over here, Brad's got some comments about how you might handle this. This is something else you can do in your reports, add comments for how you might handle these things. So if my mouse is very upset right now. If I select all of this, and then if you just search for autocorrect, autocorrect options is right here. I know the text is small. I don't know how to make this bigger. That's what the screenshots in the report for, the slides. You'll see it's right here, and it's already formatted. You can do plain text or you can do formatted text, and it pre-fills this for you. So I'm going to use iMeta for my replacement thing, and I'm going to say add that, and OK, and OK. And now, if I go into a new report, IMETA, it's not working. Even Word will hose you on live demos. There it is. Did you see it? IMETA, there it goes. That whole thing just showed up in my report with the footnote. It even has the footnote, even has all the formatted text. If there was an image on there, it would have the image on there as well. So that's autocorrect. That's kind of abusing autocorrect. That's not what it's meant for. There's another thing called auto text. If I select this again, and now I go to the insert and I do quick parts, auto text, save selection to auto text gallery. So that's what I've got selected in the document right now. And we're going to call this, the name is metadata of, and this will become important in a second. And I'm just going to save that. And now let's see if it'll work in the other document. Oh, there it was, see? As soon as I start typing the title I gave it, it says, hey, do you want to put this in here? And I hit enter, and there it is. So exact same thing. It'll do the footnote. It'll do the comment that was alongside it. I'm pointing at the comment. This is a great way to reuse content across different reports. Another way you can reuse content, you can do insert text from a file. So this is a file I have that has the boilerplate that we use for DNS recon. When we're doing reconnaissance, what do we look at for DNS? How do we do those things? So I'm going to make a new blank document. And I'm going to go back to insert. And I'm going to insert object text from file. And I'm going to say DNS. And there I get the same thing. So this is a better way to share things across different users. If you have multiple reporters, multiple testers, the autocorrect entries are very difficult to share, which is to say, I don't think you can share them practically at all. But when you're inserting text from a file, you could have a shared drive that has all of your generic text, and people just point at it here. It's a little clunkier to use. You had to do a lot more clicking. But if it gets you the result you want, that's pretty awesome. There's a custom dictionary, so you get those little red squigglies. I think this is probably less shocking to most of you. If you right click on something with a squiggly under it and do add to dictionary, the squiggly goes away. If you deliver your reports as Word documents, those squigglies are going to be in there. So you might want to update your dictionary so that those things don't get flagged. Styles and sections. This is a deep, deep area that I'm not going to get into other than to tell you that you should use them. In Word, there are things called styles. Things like headings, things like paragraphs, things like bulleted lists, and the appearance of things that have that style applied is a property of the style. And that's what makes it easy to change the appearance of a document by just applying a different style sheet. It's exactly the same concept as cascading style sheets in web pages. Use those. They'll help you with consistency. They'll help you avoid that crayon look I mentioned before. You don't have to remember, what was the font that we used for this again? How big is that font that we used for this again? Forget it. Define a style and give it a name, and use that. Then you get it for free every time. And then when you want to update the template, you just change the style definitions, and now it looks different. Macros. Macros are one of my favorite things to use in Word just because they exist and because we use them so often in pen testing to try to cause mayhem. There's actually legitimate purposes for macros, if you can believe that. And you don't need to know Visual Basic ahead of time because you can record macros and then just edit it. It's way easier to take a recorded macro and modify it than it is to write one from scratch, because VB is, moving on. Let me show you what some of those look like. So back to this, where are we? So we do screenshots, and we have a way that we want to format all of our screenshots so they look consistent from report to report. So here's my screenshot, and we like to have captions for our screenshots. So in this environment, I found this dog, and the dog seemed like it had more feet than a dog should have. But actually, when I look closer, it was okay. So here's my caption, and here's my picture. So I click on this picture, and then I run this little macro up here in the quick access toolbar. And it moves it to the center. It puts a box around the image, and it formats the text below it as the image caption. So again, something very simple. Define it once, and now you get consistency in all of your reports for free, and you look more professional. One of the styles that we have is for, it's called code snippet, which I think is a horrible name. I made up that name. I wish I had given it more thought. But this is how this guy works. We use it for things like machine names. And we click on that, and Word will format whatever that word is, where your cursor currently is, with that particular format. And this shows us, the difference between an O and a 0, and an I and a 1 and an L. And that's all great. But now, what if I want to apply it to this username? Well, if I click on this, and if I click on code snippet, it stops at the backslash. And what if I have a password I want to show, and it's got special characters in it? You know what's going to happen here, right? It's the same thing. If my cursor would behave, you would see that it only does little parts of it, whatever word, right? And that's not quite what we want. So you can write a macro, and I wrote a macro. So it's this macro has the definition of word that I gave it. The word doesn't end with a dash or an underscore or a dollar sign. It ends with white space, right? So if I run this little macro, which is this one, now it applies to that whole thing. And over here as well, it'll apply to that whole thing. I clicked the wrong macro button. This is the macro button. There we go. Now, what if I have something with a space in it? Well, I use spaces for sometimes, but I use quotes around them to indicate that this should have that formatting on it. And I have another macro that will apply this style to anything between quotes. So if I'm inside that, and if I run my other macro, now we get that. So just having this style is one thing, but other testers who don't like to play with Word as much as I like to play with Word might not take the time to do that. It's a distraction to them. And it honestly is. It pulls you out of testing. And we want to minimize that. We want you to be focused on your testing. But we also want a pretty report. So you can do things like this to try to make that easier to do. And the quick access toolbar, I hinted at that. If you click on this little arrow over here, you can go to more commands. And you can do macros. And it shows you all the macros that are available to you in this current document. And you can add them to your quick access toolbar. You can add any command at all to your quick access toolbar. That's what I do. I like to have my report formatting commands in here because I can see them. You can define keyboard shortcuts for anything in Word. You can use the defaults, or you can remap things. You can have a keyboard shortcut, whatever you want, to run macros, to do anything. I don't use those personally because I can never remember what I chose as the keyboard shortcut for that macro. It's easier for me just to go click on the button. But both of those things are available, and I describe how to do those in the slides that you all should have a copy of. Last thing is form fields and variables. Holy cow, I'm actually going to pull this off. I'm notorious for having too much content and sprinting in the last 10 minutes, but this is the last slide. So let me slow down a little bit. Here in our footer, we have the name of our customer. But we don't ever type in the footer. Nobody ever looks at that footer. There's a place in the document that we use. This is not the full report template, so it's not in this one, but it's part of the properties, the document properties. So if we go to File, Options, no, it's shoot, I'm sorry, where is this? I thought it was Options, File, Info, sorry. I do most of my stuff on a Mac, and this is way easier to find on a Mac. So here are the properties of this particular file. And if we show all properties, again, I'm sorry for the smallness of this. I don't know how to make this text bigger. But you can see here is the company. So if it's not CTech Astronomy, and if it's Acme, and we go back to our document, now you see it says Acme. So if you have things like that, where your customer's name is a perfect place for this, the contract ID is a perfect place for this, use those form fields, and then you type it in once and it shows up everywhere. This saves you from, another way to do this is to do find and replace, which you see that we do some of that as well. This here, the customer in the double braces, that is a placeholder, and we will do a global find replace on that string, and we put the customer's name in. And that works as well also. They're equivalent, really. We do more of the find and replace than the form fields because the form fields require a little bit better understanding of how Word works. And it's more than I want to ask of everybody to understand how that works and to adjust that. And find and replace works. And we're all familiar with the pitfalls of, it's got to be a unique string that you're looking for. Otherwise, things get replaced that shouldn't get replaced, and it becomes bad. So all those things are things that you can do in Word to try to remember those fundamental things, to try to make sure the little things all go in the same right direction. If you liked this, I have a one-day class I've put together that's not on the calendar yet, but it's this close to being on the calendar. It's a 4-hour class about reporting. It's got some of this content and a whole lot more about actually applying it. That'll be on the Antisyphon training site in hopefully soon, hopefully the next couple of days. So if you thought this was useful, there's more coming in a 4-hour class. Do we have any questions? I've been trying to keep an eye on the Discord, but I'm not really great at that. Anybody have any questions about anything I covered? problems with your own reports. Oh, Ian's got a question.
Yeah, well, I've been capturing them so that the folks here can. So I'll be the voice of the people. All right. So you have some questions. Let's take a look. We have from GonzoSec, question for after. How is Brian adding code blocks in Word? I haven't found a straightforward way to do that. So how are you doing that?
How do I do that? I have a style called code block or something like that. And it is a fixed width font. It's the exact same as it uses the same style, the same appearance as I showed you for the variables. It's just, it applies to the paragraph instead of the word in the paragraph. So there's a box around it. And it's got that light gray shading on it, so it stands out. The one thing I haven't figured out yet is how to do like syntax coloring in that. And I got a request from one of the testers, it'd be cool if we could do syntax coloring in those things. And I totally agree, but I don't know how to make that work in Visual Basic without writing the whole syntax parser myself.
Gotcha. Cool. No, very good. So yeah, styles. Yeah, creating your own style inside of there. Also from GonzoSec, this was more of a statement, but I did want to bring it up because they put in there, you guys put passwords in reports. Interesting. So I guess there was a point on the screen where you were talking about or showing passwords in reports. Is that just specific passwords or was that something that was inside of there? Can you speak to that a little bit?
That was entirely made up just to show you how the macro applies to whatever the word looks like. We don't put passwords in reports.
Cool. Yeah. I knew that to be true, but I wanted to make sure that it got covered there.
Yes. Good one.
White Cyberduck, are these macros that you created, are they anywhere like on GitHub or anything like that you can share?
They're not yet, but they're going to be because they're useful and they're not like proprietary at all. So yes, they will be. I will publish them sometime soon. Yes.
Awesome. All right. So then we got Bramblethorn84 also in Discord. If you use proprietary tools for the test, do you redo the screenshot / instructions in an open source or commercial tool?
That's a really good question because the reader is not going to have access to that tool to follow in your footsteps, right? Think about what it is you're trying to convey by showing them that. Sometimes we will repeat tests. We'll run a vulnerability scanner and sometimes we'll repeat, and there's a license fee for that. So some of those tests that it does will repeat with something else just as a double check to make sure it's true. But I would not go to great pains to try to duplicate the information if you're using a tool that they're not going to have access to, and if there's not a super simple like Nmap script that does the same thing your vulnerability scanner did.
Yeah, no, agreed. All right. So what else we got here? We got Marcus Boynton. Hope I'm saying your last name right. Rather than a simple template for reports, do you ever use something more structured, such as pentext from Radical Open Security? I am unfamiliar with that, but they've put here, I've used that when writing and editing reports here. Radically Open Security, our portfolio. Happy to note some reports are public in the repo that you pointed out. Have you heard of this tool? Have you ever used something like that?
What was it called again?
Pentext. It's in the Zoom Q&A when you look through. But yeah,
I have not heard of that one. No, I've not heard of that one. We have our whole process is built around Word, and we have a review process after the report is done, where the report itself goes to people who are not pen testers to read it and make sure that we don't sound like idiots. So using Word is convenient for us because they have Word and they know how that works. So to get us off of Word would require kind of a big push. So I've not seen that. I've not seen the Pentext tool before.
Gotcha. Okay. So can't really speak to that one yet, but maybe that's something we'll definitely go check out.
Yeah.
And Sikander, I hope I'm saying your name right. Sikander Abbas. I hope I'm saying that right. Can you also tell us about proposals to do a Pentest? So I assume what they mean is a scoping document. Do you use any of this stuff and help with scoping?
Yeah, our scoping documents is one gigantic document that has everything standard that we offer. And there's a macro that you check the boxes for the things the customer is asking for, and it creates a new document with just those sections in it. So yes, some Word automation helps us in that direction as well.
Next question here is from, and forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong again, I apologize. Saurabh Gupta. How do I write a report while doing the test? Word or any other tools needs my attention too. Any tips to how to do it efficiently without losing focus? And I think that last part is really the crux of the question, is how do you build that habit?
Yes, it is difficult. I won't lie. It takes some practice to get used to that. This automation helps a lot. Anything you can do to minimize the amount of time you have to spend actually in Word helps you, because then you get to focus on the test. So boilerplate language helps, but it becomes, I kind of think like I'm narrating it to somebody sitting next to me. This is what I did. The tester did this. The tester ran this tool. The tester, oh, noticed this thing here and wanted to follow up on it, so ran this tool. I'm pretty conversational as I'm writing it, and then I'll go back and I'll make it a little bit more clear, a little more formal language once I'm done. But it just takes practice. I know some folks have used like the dictation feature that's in Word now, and Google Docs has that. And it used to be what Dragon Naturally Speaking. Some folks used to use that, where you can actually speak your text and it will turn it into text for you. I never had luck with that, but maybe that works for you.
I didn't either, but you bring that up. I do want to throw a piece of advice in that some people might like as well. Those same features work the other way around. So a lot of the accessibility features is you're proofreading. Proofread it once, proofread it twice, however your process is, but then have the computer read it back to you. Yep. And often you'll hear the missed, filler words or extra filler words that you don't need. And I found that to be helpful sometimes.
Yes.
Let's take a look here. Akari Smithmeyer, I'd love to see a Mac version as well. I assume that had to do with the comments that you made around being on your Windows box instead of Mac. But everything that you showed works in the Mac version of Word, correct?
Yes, I use the Mac version of Word. So I did it in Windows because I thought more of you would use Windows. In the slides, I have everything I talked about. I have where to find it in Word for Windows and where to find it in Word for Mac. So hopefully it's all in there.
Nice. Ever thought about using LaTeX in place of Word?
Yes. Yes. Of course we have. We're a bunch of geeks. But that becomes difficult then because our editors don't use LaTeX, and it's just it becomes a big change in how we're doing things. Not everybody really wants to learn LaTeX. So it's a neat dream, but I'm not sure it'll ever happen.
Got it. Yeah, no, LaTeX is pretty and cool, but yeah, no, agreed. We got an anonymous post here, and I'm going to kind of summarize this, but essentially what it said here is, have we thought about using any sort of collaboration tools? Are we using collaboration functions when we do the reports for the editors?
Yes, while the test is going on, if there's more than one tester working on it, the report itself is up on SharePoint. So we all have it open locally. We're all working in the same document at the same time. And then we use some Power Automate scripts to route the document for approvals and edits after we're done. And the editors use the same tools that we use. So yeah, we do use some of that collaboration stuff.
Nice. And then I think the last question we have in here, I'm going to jump back in to see if we missed any or things came through while we were going here. Are there equivalents for doing these actions in Google Docs? Have you seen anything like that?
I'm sure there are. I know Google Docs uses styles just like Word does. So you can define a template that would be consistent like that. I don't know what it has for automation, like if it has macros built in. I don't use Google Docs, so at least not for this. So I haven't looked in depth to see what it might be like in terms of feature parity.
Okay. I'm scrolling through lots of comments in the Q&A just about how this is valuable for IR reports, forensic reports, pen test reports, any of it. So great stuff there. Dustin asked a great question here. What is your time frame on getting a report back to the customer after a pen test? So you showed a bunch of cool tools that help you do this, but about how long does the editing process generally take?
My goal is as fast as possible because I have another test coming up and I need to move on and I want to get this one wrapped up and out the door. By contract, there's a deadline. I think it's maybe 10 business days or something like that after the test is completed. But I try to get it to them as quickly as I can. The editorial process takes 2-3 days usually to get that feedback done, and then comes back to me as the tester, and then I process that feedback, do whatever I need to do with it, retest some things, get new screenshots, whatever I have to do to clarify the things they pointed out. It's probably 3 or 4 days total of review time.
Oh, nice. White Cyberduck dumped something in here. John Hammond just released a video about it. How fast can you write a pen test report? So John Hammond's definitely a friend of the show, if you will.
In 4 minutes, I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm
4 minutes and 23 seconds.
Yeah. Last couple questions here because we do want to wrap up. But one of the questions came through. Clients' preferences. Do they generally like the reports delivered in the Word doc, the docx, or do we convert to PDF and send that through? What's the client preference, and what do we do?
We've had that conversation a few times, which is better. If we give them a Word document, that's editable, they could change it accidentally or on purpose. If you give them a PDF, then they're less likely to make accidental changes, but well, you can still change those if you want to. So a lot of this comes down to, I saw some questions earlier in the chat also about, if you're not doing screenshots, how do you provide proof of what you found? If it's just text, all that text is editable. At some point, there's no getting around trust. You have to hire someone you trust to do your report, and you have to trust them to be honest, and to be honest, and then also to have the skills to interpret things correctly. So you'll never get away from that. You'll never prevent people from making mistakes, or never prevent someone from forging your report if that's what they want to do. I don't think we've ever had a problem with it, but our answer to that question is both. We deliver the docx version and a PDF version, so they have both, and then the customer can do whatever they want with those things once they've got them.
Yeah. And I do want to interject one other thing there. And I love the comment. You can never get around trust if you don't have the trust there or whatever. But part of building that trust is, delivering findings. And you mentioned it during the thing, BB, that replication. If you've given them the steps to replicate what you did, it doesn't matter if it's editable. They're going to go back and they're going to try and replicate it. They're going to see that it's true. And go with it. And I've been on the other side of pen test reports where that's the first thing I do. I go, all right, let me go replicate the pen tester's findings. Yeah, no, that's 100% a thing.
Good.
And I think this will be basically the last question and then a comment. White Cyberduck, you actually just pasted in exactly what I was going to say about PlexTrack. So a lot of people saying, what do you guys think of reporting tools like PlexTrack? And in full disclosure, PlexTrack is a sponsor of our conferences, Wild West Hack and Fest, but they're also a friend of the show. And John, if you look in the Discord, tweeted about them being one of the good companies. So their company is great, but what about like tooling like that? BB, have you used it? Do you like it?
Well, I did look at PlexTrack years ago, and so I don't want to say anything about how it might be now because I don't know how it works right now. But at the time that we looked at it, I loved some of the automation stuff. I think it had some things built in where you could have like a set of findings. You could have boilerplate text that you could pull in pretty easily. It was just, if I remember correctly, years ago, it was workflow things that made it less attractive to us. Part of it was the editorial review we do afterwards with folks who use Microsoft Word and are editors and are not full-time employee type things. So that's what I remember being the most of it, was just for our particular use case. It didn't quite fit with the habits that we had, but it did look like a really good way of handling some of the problems I've talked about. How do you be consistent? How do you have a nice, good style, good template to work in? I think it addressed most of those.
So for those who are asking about PlexTrack, it looks like we've got some folks in the Discord who are active customers. So I would definitely reach out to them for opinion on that. Last question here, and I did say last question, but this one just slid in from Janice that I really liked. With your macros and whatnot, how do you manage situations where you've got automation when when for already completed reports you need to change a thing that requires changes on many pages, priority of finding, things like that. So I love that because it's like, hey, you've got this macro automation and you just need to change it in one place, not everywhere. How do you address that?
Well, it depends on what the change is. If it's changing the severity of something, that's pretty easy. The severities in our report template are a function of the style. So to change something from high to medium, we just click a different style and there it goes. If it's changing words, or if it's changing screenshots, or we missed a particular area and need to go back in and look at it again, we would just do that manually. We would just go through and make all those updates by hand and run it past the editors, tell them what we did, make sure that they take a second set of eyes at it and make sure we got as much as we could.
Cool. So we're going to try not to suck at capitalism for just a moment, but only because y'all asked. People are asking, when can I take this class? Will it be on demand? Will it be live? How much will it be? Will BB sign my cast? That kind of thing.
So it's not on the calendar yet, but it should be very soon. I would guess sometime in the next 2 weeks or so. It'll be a 4-hour class. and it will go to on demand as quick as we can get it there. So if you can't make it in person, then the on demand option is there. I think it's important. I'm really, I hate this word, but I'm really passionate about this. I think it's important, and I think not enough people are talking about it. So I want to get it out there to as many folks as we can. So we'll do a live session, and we'll try to turn that into on demand as quick as we can.
Any idea of pricing? That seems to be what a lot of folks are interested in. Like
the pricing will probably be whatever any other one-day class is, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
Yeah, if it's in person at the conferences right now, we have our Baltimore training coming up at B-Sides Charm. So check that out if you haven't. That's where all the Carl Crab references are coming from, and those are $1,095 when they're in person, but that's for a 2-day. So I think we're around like 500.
Well, the 2-day class is actually 4-day class. They're 16 hours. So so it would be probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% of that cost. I don't know for sure. Whatever. If you go to antisyphontraining.com and look for any other 1-day 4-hour class, whatever that charge is probably what this one will be as well.
Long story short, folks, we don't have a price on it yet, but just like all the other classes, it will be very affordable.
Hopefully affordable and quick. Yeah.
Yeah, jam-packed with good stuff. So that is it. BB, I'm sure there's going to be people who have other questions. Hopefully you'll have time to jump into the Discord and take a look at the webcast, see if there's any questions that we missed and answer those. Thank you.
Yes.
Taking the time to share your expertise in this area. I agree. It is something that we need to focus a lot more on. So, BB, from everyone who got a chance to listen, the 800 or so people that I think was the peak there that I saw watching in Zoom, which is amazing for a talk on reporting. Because you're right, not enough people are talking about it. They don't know. Oh, this isn't breaking stuff. But thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the time. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. We'll do more of these, our webcasts on Thursday, and the videos will be up shortly. And Deb and everyone coming back in. Deb, did I miss anything? Anything else I need to throw in?
You got it all, buddy. You did great.
Woohoo!
Good job, BB.
All right.
Well,
good job, BB.
Thanks. Well, thank you all for coming. I think it says a lot about you. And I mean this. If you're going to take time out of your day to listen about reporting, then you must be pretty serious about doing a good job. So
for sure.
Give yourself a pat on the back for being here from me.
That's right. For all of you who stuck around, you're the good people.
Right.
Everyone else. All the other folks that left, don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
harsh.
They gave it their best. They came.
Good. All right. From all of us here at Black Hills Information Security, BB, myself, and all, thank you for joining. Ryan, kill the stream with fire.
With fire. Kill it.